one thought that occurs to me, and I haven't really gone to the nth degree, is that we are trying to shoehorn a concept which is usually resolved through an inquisitorial process into an adversarial process. So if you think about how we draft contracts in England, contracts are long, they're very detailed, they've got provision upon provision, and they try on complex projects to deal with all the risks that are there. You might find that if you're under a French contract or a UAE contract, the contract's quite short, because what is required to be done should be obvious to everyone.
Or it's codified.
But if you then look at most civil codes, they then go to that nth degree in the same way that an English law contract.
Yes.
So you're forcing these two very, fundamentally different propositions together. One is substantive and one is procedural, or vice versa. And you're saying, well, look, what we're trying to do is impact on behaviour. But if there is a dispute in a common law jurisdiction, for each party to define what they think the good faith obligation is, and then argue about why that has caused loss, as opposed to saying, actually, parties should act in good faith to one another, give it to an inquisitorial tribunal who will go away, and then that you trust that tribunal to work out what the answer is, rather than choosing between the two stated positions.
Well, the interesting thing is, I've done an exercise with a German lawyer once. So I looked at some German cases which involved kind of construction cases from an English law perspective, and he looked at English cases from a German law perspective. We sort of came to the same answer. There is a bit of a, again, going back to morality and economics, some of the thread is that English law is very much business is war, contract rules everything, you live and die by the contract, and if the contract says that's what it is, end of story. Civil law approach seems to be a bit more, the contract has supremacy, but you can't ignore more general notions of fairness, so you work with both, as opposed to the English business is war, we don't care about fairness at all.
But it is legitimate to use contracts, I personally feel, as a method of behavioural modification, because 9 out of 10 of them, that might result in behaviour modification without it ever actually going to a tribunal.
It's worth a try, even if you accept it's only aspirational. Why not start with a good aspiration?
Yeah. Do we need a good faith clause then?
Well,
or do we just let the contract
under
be
English law
correct and function under English law? And we have the Statute of the Construction Act, and we have litigation. We have all those things which will eventually resolve your dispute. What does good faith add to us if we're only trying to shoehorn
if the parties have a good relationship, because they worked with each other for the last 20 years,
we have that from collaboration
and they have it, I agree with you, the contract makes a lot less of a difference. Yeah. And in a funny way, if the parties have a good relationship, the contract matters less. The real test of the contract is more issues. Under English law at least, if you say nothing, unless it's relational contract, you won this argument. And I was thinking, what's the harm? There's a benefit, as you say, telling the parties, just to be clear, we're starting this project for the next 5 years, we'll try to work with each other collaboratively, open communications, we'll help each other when we can, because it's for the benefit of all of us, if you genuinely believe in it.
But does that have to be defined? Or is that not just a matter of course? When the builder comes round to your house, and he walks up the drive, you make him a cup of tea and a biscuit, give him a biscuit.
What's your experience of the industry? Is it a matter of course that people behave in this way?
Well, I'm just thinking, sort of going back pre-construction in terms of what we had with the JCT and the GCC and the IFCs. I wasn't brought up in a contracting environment with good faith. I was brought up with, that's how we understand the contract. And we fell out, we settled, we moved forward, we got resolution.
Did those relationships endure though?
Lots of them did, but obviously the fallout relationship.
Because of all, in despite of the conduct of the parties during the contract.
The fallout relationships didn't endure because there was no sympathy clause. It was you were either in or you were out on the contract, and that was it.
But
would the good faith clause, or if there was a good faith clause, would it have changed anything at that point in time? If the chap was still late with his work and we still decided, as the contractor he was late, he'd not given us a notice, would we say, well, in good faith, we knew you were late because you ran out of petrol that morning, you couldn't get the Bowser going, so you couldn't produce the mortar to lay the bricks? it's the contract
I think
tells
the
us
answer
the
is
wasn't
the
it?
contract is a start, it's not the end of the story.
Yeah.
What I tend to tell people, just because you've signed a contract with it's not the end of the story. What you then have to do is you have to explain to people what they've signed, and you have to explain to them what it means,
Yeah.
and how it could affect their behavior. So the contract is not the end of the story.